From the National Newsroom of the Canadian Press, I'm Karen Rebo. The judge presiding over the trial of a man accused of fatally running over a Toronto police officer is set to continue her instructions to the jury today, and then the jury would get the case. Ontario Superior Court Justice Anne Malloy began explaining the relevant legal principles to jurors in the trial of Umar Zameer late yesterday. Earlier, prosecutors and defense lawyers had made their final pitches to the jury, laying out their narrative of what happened on July 2nd, 2021. Zameer has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the death of Detective Constable Jeffrey Northrup, who was hit by a vehicle in an underground parking garage. Jury selection in the hush money trial of Donald Trump enters a pivotal and potentially final stretch today. Lawyers looking to round out the panel of New Yorkers that will decide the first-ever criminal case against a former U.S. president. Proceedings resume today after a day off. 7 jurors have been picked so far. 11 more people must still be sworn in, with the judge saying he anticipated opening statements to be given as early as next week. Members of the Union of Canadian Correctional Officers plan to hold a protest today in BC over escalating violence in prisons.
The union says prisons have become overwhelmed by a surge in drone drops of weapons and drugs, which have increased violence in correctional facilities. In a statement, the union says its officers are routinely targeted for assaults, often leaving them with both physical and psychological injuries. John Randall, a regional president with the union in the Pacific region, says the violent incidences against guards have exploded across the country, and it's worsening a mental health crisis among its members. Union members plan to protest outside the regional headquarters of the Correctional Service of Canada today in Abbotsford, British Columbia. Naira Ahmed, The Canadian Press.
Police in Calgary have made an arrest in the death of a toddler more than a year and a half ago. A lengthy investigation and an autopsy by the Chief Medical Examiner's Office have deemed the 2-year-old girl's death a homicide. The victim, now identified as Olivia Hayden, was rushed to hospital in September of 2022 after an emergency call was placed for a toddler in medical distress. Police say an unidentified man was taken into custody yesterday and that manslaughter charges are pending. They say the accused knew the child, and this was not a random incident. And tens of millions of dollars in foreign aid await approval by the U.S. Congress. The funding, if finally passed, would come at a critical time for Ukraine, as we hear from ABC's Perry Russum.
Yesterday in northern Ukraine, at least 17 people were killed in an airstrike. An attack officials say could have been stopped if Ukraine had adequate air defenses. And in the Middle East, as the war in Gaza continues, ABC News has learned that Israel, on 2 nights this week, prepared attacks against Iran but canceled those plans. Sources now say an Israeli strike on Iran is unlikely until after the Passover holiday at the end of the month.
This is the Canadian Press. In sports, the 70th goal proved elusive for Toronto Maple Leaf center Auston Matthews in his team's last game of the regular season. Number 34 was unable to score the milestone marker during either of the Leafs' losses on back-to-back nights in Florida against the Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning.
I wanted it for sure, but it just wasn't meant to be. And for myself, as we look forward, you turn the page.
The Leafs now turn their sights to Boston, where they'll face the Bruins Saturday night to open round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Coyotes closed out their 28-year tenure in Arizona as winners in a 5-2 victory over the playoff-bound Edmonton Oilers. In the NBA, Miami Heat guard Jimmy Butler says he'll need an MRI on his right knee after he was hurt in the first half of the Heat's play-in tournament loss to Philadelphia. And the Chicago Bulls advanced in the play-in tournament, knocking out the Atlanta Hawks 131-116. From the Canadian Press, I'm Karen Rebo.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. For more of today's top stories, visit thecanadianpressnews.ca.